live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Are we live? Did I miss the signal?
Yeah.
I blinked. I blinked trying to set up the review over here. You know, like, what was that, like 200 consecutive shows and I've never missed it yet. I never missed the cue. There was a brief lag and I was like glanced over, but back and better than ever. Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube, wherever you may be, however you may be listening, coast to coast, live and in living color on this Wednesday evening. Hope you're having a good one. I am back. I like to think better than ever, but time will tell. We shall see. Was off last week. I like the way Joe opened the show because I did get to catch the beginning of the show last week, and he was like he had a choice between seeing Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, or doing the show, and you can see what choice he made. I really had to see that movie. I really had to see it because I've been anticipating it for a while. It's no better than the trailer. Spoiler alert. It's no better than the trailer leads you on to believe. But it does have a couple certain charming aspects to it. I was going to review it today, but I think the news segment we're going to talk about Marvel here is a bit more serving, better served for this show, especially just due to the fact that that Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is kind of really rapidly faded from even the cinephile nerd discussion. There really wasn't a whole lot memorable to talk about it. So we're going to talk about Marvel saturation. That's always a fun topic, as well as review Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And man, is that a mouthful of a title. Like, I saw the movie, obviously. I wrote the review, but it wasn't until saying Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That just sounds like your mouth is full, saying it aloud. I recommend doing it at least once during this show just to really get the mouthfeel of that title, because that is lofty. Ant-Man Quantumania might have sufficed, especially just given the fact that Wasp is like a non-factor in this movie. But I'm already bleeding into the review. I'm already bleeding into my thoughts on this. So first things first, though. Dom, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Still getting ship back together, and I'm honestly just it's the same old song and dance. I'm just dealing with medical insurance, so that's fun. Fun fact: ambulances are mostly out of network, which means get an Uber. That is actually very commonplace in the United States. You just get an Uber for non-emergencies, or just drive yourself. And yep, it was a $3,300 ambulance visit for a hospital that's like 5 minutes away. So.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
dude, I know gas prices are screwed, but Jesus.
In November. This happened in November. I'm still dealing with it.
No, dude, ambulance is not cheap. Like, I've had two experiences. One was a relative. The other was me. This was 11 years ago, though. 10 years ago, actually, when I had my allergic reaction and I had anaphylactic reaction. I remember the ambulance bill, even at that time, was like $1,300, $1,400. And that was about a 10-minute ride. And have you guys ever ridden in an ambulance, like been the actual patient in an ambulance before? It is the worst fucking ride on the face of the earth. Yeah. It is the worst ride. You're already in distress, but nobody tells you that you feel every goddamn bump in the road. It's like getting on a wagon. It's like laying down in a wagon. It was an ambulance ride. I've done it once. I hope I never have to do it again because that sucked.
Do you ever play that game? It was like an arcade game where you have to play an ambulance driver. And like you drive from the scene to the hospital, and like every time you bump into anything, there's like a picture-in-picture screen of like the actual bus in the back with the patient and the paramedic trying to work on them. And every time you hit something like a light pole or a fire hydrant or whatever, you just see them like shake all over, and it's like, yeah, well that sucks.
Yeah, there's like nothing, and there's like the thing I remember because I was still cognizant enough to know what was kind of going on. that stretcher that you're on is not locked in place.
No,
it's got wheels on it. You're sliding. Like the medics are doing everything they can to keep you stationary.
Place,
to keep you stationary, but the fucking thing rocks. Like, you are not like as secure as you might think. I did ambulance missions, EMT missions in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Does that count? Does that count? You know, I always like the firefighter ones the best. Those were my favorite. Anyway, Joe, how are you?
Sorry, I'm just eating the rest of these leftovers I have. I'm doing good. Yeah, just, work is work. This weather sucks. Glad it wasn't snow, but cold rain sucks as much. So, yeah, I'm ready to talk about what we're going to talk about today, though.
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I feel like any time that we talk about anything Marvel, this is kind of your Super Bowl, because you are easily the biggest Marvel fan of the three of us. You've been the most devout, not only seeing all the movies, but also you have more of a comic background than Dom and myself, at least. Truthfully, like, the only two superheroes I ever kept real tabs on, and the one was more recent. I grew up with Spider-Man. I devoured a ton of Spider-Man literature.
One is.
well, there's King Shark. There's the Goat Man King Shark. Let's not mince words. I did read that six comic series, which was really good about King Shark. He was dope. The other one I was gonna say, because I remember I read 2 anthologies of it pre-pandemic in like 2019. I fucking love Hellboy.
Oh, yeah.
I am one of the only people on the face of the earth that's looking forward to this third Hellboy reboot. I'll take whatever Hellboy you give me. Okay. And I'm also one of maybe the 5 people on the face of the earth who really kind of like Neil Marshall's reboot in 2019.
I'm not one of those.
With David Harbour. That was kind of a fun movie. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I like Hellboy. And let me just say, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. This ain't no Hellboy. This ain't no Spider-Man. This is Ant-Man. For the record, I've been high on the Ant-Man series, at least up until this point. I've been high on it, not exorbitantly high, but I really liked the first film. I felt like the first movie was like a really effectively done stopgap origin story to an otherwise like niche hero. And if you remember the time in which it came out, it was FYI, guys, Ant-Man is 8 years old this year, the original Ant-Man. Just full disclosure. The first Ant-Man is 8 years old this year. It came out in between Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War. It came out at a very good time. Yeah. It was a time when we weren't getting like 4 or 5 Marvel movies a year, but after Age of Ultron and how kind of mixed that was, and before Civil War when we knew shit was going to get serious, Ant-Man was like this really nice hammock, well-done movie that introduced us to a new hero. It was more lighthearted. And even Ant-Man and the Wasp, I thought was very effectively done for the most part. I had a good amount of enjoyment with it. Now this one, Quantumania, we're 31 movies deep with the MCU, if you're keeping score over here. And this is one of the weakest installments, I think, in the MCU. And there haven't been any. I mean, like Fantastic Four, some of the later X-Men sequels, they're not technically part of the MCU, so I don't really count those. But like, there haven't been any downright bad Marvel movies, in my opinion. There haven't been any god-awful Marvel movies. Yeah, but this one's very low on the totem pole. I've probably seen about 25 of the 31. And this one's pretty low on the totem pole, though, as far as things are concerned. This is also, at least theatrically speaking, unless I might have missed something in Shang-Chi or one of the ones, Eternals, or one of the ones I didn't see. Joe, is this the theatrical introduction to Kang?
No.
This is...
Well, hold on. Theatrical, yes. It is the theatrical introduction to Kang. I'm not gonna get to this comic lingo bullshit here, but he was introduced in one of the shows on Disney Plus.
I knew that. I knew he was in the show.
I'm not. But this is the theatrical. Who he was on the show or anything. That's gonna be a whole like bowl of worms. But go on.
Somebody's gonna say this is too hyperbolic here, and maybe it's just because I don't hate this movie like the internet does. I think it's just mediocre. But this is probably as big of a slog as any Marvel movie since Daredevil. In terms of just kind of just
like the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Yes.
Wow.
I didn't say Elektra. I didn't say Elektra. Said remember that. I said Daredevil. But yeah, it might not be that lackluster, but this movie felt like a 2 hour installment of characters running around a screensaver. That's what this
Oof,
that's what this felt
that's
like to me. I will throw it up. I will throw it over to Joe to piggyback off of that.
If you don't mind, because I am the comic book guy, I would like to go after Dom this time.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I was kind of low key shitting all over this movie in the lead up to it because
That's a good attitude.
the title really does a lot to tell you what kind of movie it is. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantum Mania. Just that choice of title alone gives it a certain level of camp that is hard to take seriously. Now, granted, that plays into its favor because I feel like that is probably what it's going for. This is probably one of the floatiest movies I'll probably see this year, short of a Fast and Furious movie. It is really on that level. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. But Marvel has such an identity crisis in the year 2023, which we will talk about later after this review. But it's having such an identity crisis that it's hard to tell like what it kind of needs to be, and therefore it's hard to take any one movie truly individually, because you can usually do that with trilogies, maybe certainly even on a franchise, but something as big as this Marvel Cinematic Universe, it is very difficult to say. So as best as I can assess it, it was decent actually, but pouring through the screen was this sense of dread that I had for the goddamn animators, the CGI artists that are just piled up. If you've ever seen like Warhammer 40K, like the bodies pile up in like these massive mounds of like blood and gore just from all the death and destruction. Just imagine that with like animators, all their wrists and fingers broken, while Kevin Feige is like screaming into the abyss, trying to pull more out of him. But yeah, dude, it's rough. It's not horrible. It's like, this isn't like freaking Scorpion King level, CGI or anything. And I think people are very quick to be like, oh, the CGI sucked, and then they equate it to like some of the worst like 90s CGI possible. No, not really, but it really wears on you. Honestly, more than the technical aspect of CGI, I think what people really mean to get at is just the design choices here are so balloonish and not in a purposeful way. It's so floaty. It really does feel like 2000 screensaver. The feeling, obviously, it's very technically sufficient. Don't get me wrong, but it kind of fails in the macro, and everyone feels that. Even if you don't know the technicals of CGI, you definitely feel that. So I could go into some of the plot and the characters or whatever, but it's so floaty. That's the word I guess I'm going to choose today for this movie is that it's hard to really get into. So I'll just pass it into Joe.
All right. Both of you, I'm just going to say this. This is how I'll start off with it. I'm glad to see it seems like we're all on the same page in terms of how we feel about the movie. Because just like you, Steve, I don't think this is as bad as something like X-Men Apocalypse, as like some people on the internet are making it out to be. Or even the other like X-Men sequels after Bryan Singer left and everything, where like Fox was like, we need to compete with Marvel. I don't think it's as bad as that, or the early 90s stuff, despite like some people on the internet are making it out to be. But dude, yeah, this is a low point right now for Marvel. I know a lot of people were kind of crapping on Phase 4, but like I walked away from Phase 4, at least like some of the shows were really good. I liked Loki, I liked WandaVision a lot. I thought the movies varied, but for the most part I enjoyed them. Shang-Chi, Spider-Man, Multiverse of Madness, like those. But it's like, it was starting to wear down on me because, for every movie I liked, I got 2 or 3 properties right after that were just kind of mediocre or bad. And like, it's like, okay, here we go again. It was like, okay, I went to the theater to go see Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Loved it. Had a great time. Moon Knight, alright, this kind of sucked. Miss Marvel, okay, this was kind of mediocre. She-Hulk, this was kind of alright too. Oh, I got Wakanda Forever. Okay, Ant-Man and Quantumania, that was okay. And it's just like, oh man, I'm in another loop again with this shit. Like, it's just like, well, what's going on here? This movie is, yeah, it's one of the weakest entries to, I think, this franchise as a whole, and it's mainly because it really doesn't know what the hell it wants to do. For the 2 hour runtime of this, for about an hour and 20 minutes, there's nothing happening. It's just characters kind of just hanging out on a green screen. If your name isn't Ant-Man, you're giving nothing. If your name isn't Ant-Man and you're not the villain of this movie, you're given nothing to do. Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Evangeline Lilly, who plays the Wasp, those three characters have a whole different storyline right now when they're stuck in the quantum realm. And they're really given nothing to do throughout this movie. The whole time, Michelle Pfeiffer keeps saying, we have to hide from him. We have to hide from him. He'll know if I'm here. And if he knows I'm here, we're in big trouble. And it's like, okay, but who the hell is he? I know who he is. I've watched Loki. I know who this guy is, alright? Like, let's just get to it already. Like, why the hell are we wasting our time here? Everybody in this Thursday night theater that I'm with knows who this guy is. Like, let's just go, okay? Why are we an hour and 20 minutes and Jonathan Majors is still not being introduced in this movie? It's literally, it's just that for an hour and 20 minutes. Characters just walking on sets. And don't get me wrong, the sets do look cool. There's some really cool skyboxes here. Some of the, some of the CGI reminds me of Star Wars. It's really weird. It reminds me of the Star Wars, like, cantinas and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, it looks interesting. But after a while, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what's the conflict here? Yeah, we have to get home, but, like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? Anytime Paul Rudd's on screen, I'm at least laughing. Like, his humor, for the most part, I think Paul Rudd is just a veteran of comedy that anything you give him, he can try to spin it in a way that will make you laugh. But finally, at like an hour and 30 minutes of this movie, I wasn't really checking my watch, so I don't know. But when King is finally introduced into this movie, there's about 20 minutes that this movie is awesome. And I was like, okay, here we go. How much time we have left of this movie? Fuck, we're an hour in. All right, like, what can you do? And King is introduced. He's cool. He's collective. He's menacing. Jonathan Majors is a great actor. I can't wait to see him in Creed 3 in 2 weeks. There's a really cool action sequence involving the probability of, like, you doing something and those probabilities actually becoming their own sentient living thing and trying to, like, mess you over and stuff. And I was like, this is a cool action sequence. And right when that action sequence ended, it's almost like the movie went, we're done, but we got 30 minutes left, so here's our big climax that we have to do at the end of every Marvel movie that you see every time. And it's not a bad climax, but it's like, this is so generic. I've seen this done in Disney movies, where it's like, the underdog civilization of the Ewoks is gonna come and rise against the Grand Empire with their, like, the sticks and stones, and somehow overthrow this guy who's, like, technologically advanced by, like, years, millenniums, whatever. It's just like the Ewoks in that scenario. It's just like every Disney animated movie where there's, like, some overall, like, ruler, like in Beauty and the Beast, when the furniture comes to life and they fight the town. And it's just like, by the end of the movie, it wraps up, and I'm like, dude, there were no consequences to this. This is your next big bad, and I didn't feel any consequences to it. Now, before someone in the chat is like, well, if you stuck around for the end credits, yes, there's consequences there. But let's use Wakanda Forever as an example real quick, and I swear to God, I'll pass it off, because I know I've been going on for a long time. Wakanda Forever had conflict. You had this Mayan civilization that was like, stop getting these fucking people in my back door. And then you had the Wakandas being like, hey, look, we're trying to be more friendly with the world right now. We can't just close off right now. Like, that was the whole point. Like, our prince opened the borders and everything. Our king, I should say, technically. There was this whole conflict. What did that conflict lead to? It led to, like, espionage on this whole civilization. They ended up betraying them. It led to the death of a few Wakandans, including a major character. There was an actual war going on. Conflict and, like, an actual like something came out of it that felt like, oh my god, like this is terrible what happened. And the resolution to it was like, hey, we're gonna have like this peace treaty, but like we're still at like, we still don't know if we're like on good terms with one another. Like we just call it off right here, and try to work things out. And it left me going by the end, before the credit stingers. Even though we know what the credit stingers were, they didn't lead into anything. But by the end of that movie, I was like, I cannot wait to see what happens next in Wakanda. By the end of this movie, and they've confirmed as an Ant-Man 4, I said, I don't give a shit what happens in the next Ant-Man, because it's just like, what is there really to do with Scott Lang at this point? That by the end of this movie, it's like, we solved the biggest issue with him, which is like the time with his daughter, and it seemed like none of that really mattered in the end, because that was kind of just thrown out the window, that whole conflict he had with his daughter. But even like the big bad, it was just like, dude, this movie really felt like it was an assembly line. I know like a lot of people say that's most Marvel movies, and I have to agree with you, yeah. And the one thing I've been saying is like, for everybody who's saying, and God, I swear I'm almost done. Everybody who's been saying like, oh, Marvel's been messing up lately, it's like, dude, no, like Marvel wasn't perfect even during those like original first 3 phase movies, whatever you want to call them, Infinity Saga. Like there were still low moments there, but like the thing was is we weren't, and we'll lead into this to our next subject, there wasn't that many projects coming out that you felt like you were getting burnt out. That, yeah, every once in a while you'll get an Age of Ultron or a Thor the Dark World, but then you got a Spider-Man Homecoming, a Civil War, a Thor Ragnarok, a Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was like, oh shit, these are fun to go see. I can't wait to see what happens next. But it's like, dude, when I have something coming out almost every month, it's like, oh man, and now DC's coming back, and they're coming back hard, and it's like, well, now DC's actually putting like good products out there every once in a while, so it's like, you gotta step up your game, Marvel. It's like, I'm getting burnt out, as big of a comic guy as I am, and I'm, as Steve says, like, I'm probably am the biggest one on the show. Dude, by the end of 2021, thank God Wakanda Forever was good, because I was burnt out. I was so tired of this, and we're starting off this year in February with the amount of fucking projects that are coming out from studios, and I'm just like, dude, I'm gonna be there, of course, but I'm not looking forward to some of these now even more, just because of how this one started. Like, yeah, I'm looking forward to Guardians 3, but the Marvels, I'm hoping Nia DaCosta can bring something, but this isn't giving me that much faith. I'm sorry I went on so long there.
Joe can parlay into closing thoughts at this point.
You needed that.
He needed that. No, and it was a lot of good stuff, but a lot of stuff I mostly agree with. Yeah, to piggyback off of Joe's last point about how there was always sort of like, even during some of the lulls, I remember what really roped me back into it. I just said I liked Ant-Man. I really like Civil War, and Civil War reestablished stakes, sides, and where it was going. That Marvel has ebbed and flowed enough that like there's always been like this course, not a course correction, but another ball to juggle that made like all the movies worth it, even some of the lacking ones. It's been now, what are we at now? It has been 14, 15 months now since No Way Home, which I think was the last time like that I was truly captivated and riveted and surprised by a Marvel movie. This, and I know like it's hard to talk. I mean, Marvel's kind of done this itself though. Like, I know we're supposed to be talking about Quantumania here, but like the thing is they always build these movies to build the next 4 or 5, so you inevitably wind up talking about what's coming. That's one of the biggest flaws of Marvel, has been since the jump. But I feel like Quantumania just being, I think we can call it, we're not talking financials because it made a lot of money, but like we're talking like at least reception wise, it's probably been a universal disappointment for just by consensus. This puts a lot, I feel like for people like Joe and I who see all these movies, or he sees more than I do, it puts a lot more pressure on Guardians 3 to be something special. And I wasn't high on the second Guardians movie, but this puts a lot of pressure on the third Guardians movie to kind of have at least something to tell, a complete story, number one, but number two, like bring some of the fun and the characterization back.
Like, and I think Guardians can deliver that. I got faith in James Gunn because I wasn't that
I
big of
do
a
too.
fan of Volume 2, but I did enjoy the Suicide Squad and I loved Peacemaker. Um, I think he'll end it on a good note. But the way I look at Guardians as well is like that's mostly just wrapping up their thing. I don't think that's gonna lead into anything. So as much as like that could be a great movie for like a lot of fans, it's like the next thing that's like okay, but like what are we leading into? It's really the Marvels, and it's like that's like dude, like it's like again, that's just unfair to the next movie after that as well. It's just like everybody's gonna go in. It's like, all right, we've been getting so much, but like, where are we going? Like, yeah, I've seen the Comic-Con presentation. I know we're leading to another Avengers movie, but damn it, how the hell are we getting there?
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that question because it's so. This is the start. This is officially the first Phase 5 movie.
Yeah,
4 just blew me by, with some notable releases. You know, like I like She-Hulk, sure, but like a majority of it just passed me by. Which this is the next topic, but like I do wonder. I'll just tease it with like how much of this does the studio expect to like for us to watch or to enjoy? What's like the hit percentage there? What's like the accuracy? Anyway, I guess just to tie, just the visual aspect into it, because we're talking very abstract right now. In terms of what people saw, I noticed that the eclectic design of all the characters and the background characters and the citizens of this quantum world, this really felt like a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of movie
yeah,
where it's like Guardians, it's like the MCU's version of space and space civilization is actually very interesting
it
to
is.
me because it's very tactile, very humanoid, um, and like but also they're not afraid to go like do some crazy shit. It honestly does rival Star Wars in terms of at least just the design
Yeah,
aspect alone.
it reminded me of the
And just
parts that I
yeah.
liked of Strange World. Like it's like just like
Mm.
parts of that movie where it was like how this like world worked and everything. But
Oh yeah, that movie exists.
But with all the Guardians movies, um, there there are tactile parts to them. Even though a lot of it is drenched in CGI, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't give too much of that aesthetic off to me. Whereas Quantum Mania is the polar opposite. Like I am feeling the green screen like behind these characters, like full. I don't care how good that Mandalorian tech they developed was. Like it is a lot of that, and it does not feel tactile. It feels very tacked on, and it's you feel it. The audience feels it. I'm a big proponent of even if the regular moviegoer can't articulate why they feel this way, they can feel it, and certainly they can be wrong most of the time when they try to get it in there, when they try to pronounce it in a very purposeful cerebral way. But often even when they fail in that respect, their instincts are usually correct. um and you definitely feel it because it really is the inverse, right? So space big, expansive, quantum verse small, inward. And you both have these design choices, but if you compare them piece by piece, I would love for like not a cinematographer, but like some wardrobe or set design person to like compare those two, like the a Guardians movie and this Quantum verse movie, and it's really is. I'm sure they'd have a lot to go over. Maybe the corridor guys can talk about it, but regardless, that's where I'll leave it because Jonathan Majors really is carrying this movie, and he's only carrying it to at best a mediocre degree.
I've seen somebody say he is the defibrillator for this movie.
Kind of is,
That's
yeah.
really good.
Oh, because he solidified himself as at least a presence and a really good actor. I know not a lot of people saw Devotion last year. Came out the same week as Strange World, actually. But Jonathan Majors can act. Like he's a very good actor, and this I don't know how much range he's going to be able to show here, but he's off to a good start. At least I can't speak for Loki, but he's at least off to a really good start here.
And I would say going off of Loki and knowing what I know from comics about this character, an actor like him is perfect for this role because this is dealing with similar to No Way Home, how there's different versions of Peter Parker and how like they all like come into one universe. That's what Kang is about. It's about like a council of them and everything, and each one has their own ideology and personality. And I will say, like, what they teased at the end of the movie with the credits thing, I wasn't really fully with. But it's like, I'm hoping they kind of restructure that and just be like, hey, let's not go a very cartoony route with this villain.
While we have a few minutes or so, I'll bring this point up too. Like, I was trying to put my finger on like an hour into this movie why I just wasn't with it and why I wasn't enjoying it. And the best conclusion I think I came to, I mentioned it in my review at stevepulaski.com, is I said, like, the whole idea of this is that, like, Scott Lang, Ant-Man's daughter, builds this entry, this portal into the quantum realm. Excuse me if I'm not getting the exact terminology right, but builds this portal into the quantum realm, and the whole Lang family, the Wasp, Catherine Newton, everybody gets sucked into it too, even her grandparents as well, Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer. So they all get sucked into it, and they're trying to get out. That's the whole thing. They're like running around in this. It's bringing back memories for Michelle Pfeiffer's character Janet, the Wasp's mother, bringing back her. Why she spent 30 years in this fucking place and never warned anybody about Kang doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Exactly.
That's like the first thing you would talk about coming out of there.
It's like we got dude, this guy came back. You're like, oh, dude, yeah, that dude Thanos is crazy. But I got something to tell you.
Yo, we got suave Hitler over here. Can let's talk about him first?
30 years. She might have slept with him and Peter Venkman, but no, don't mention any of that. But anyway, no. Moreover, the thing though is that I thought about, like, an hour into it, I'm like, why the hell am I not vibing with this? And it's like, what maybe would have made this better if they went into the quantum realm with a purpose, like they were trying to retrieve something or someone or figure out something. Like, it reminds me of like an Avatar, The Way of Water, how there was at least an objective throughout the movie, and it was like you were working towards something, which made the violence feel more grounded and justified and intense and perilous. Where it's a lot of running around. It's a lot of like multiverse madness, not to be a pun, but that's really what it feels. I said it in the beginning, it feels like they're running around in a damn screensaver.
And here's the thing. I mean, what if you wanted it to be a movie where they're trapped and they're trying to get out? That's fine. They just don't feel. Here's the fucking thing I don't get about this movie is that when Ant-Man was stuck in the quantum realm, like 5 hours was 5 years. Like, that was the whole math thing they did. And they bring it up again in this movie that, like, oh yeah, like, time works differently down there compared to out here. Like a minute is really an hour out here, however it was. And it's like they get in the quantum realm and everybody's like, okay, all right. They like dust themselves off. We just gotta regroup and get out of here. And it's like, is no one freaking out that if, like, we spend an hour in here, a fucking year goes by? And it's like, no one is panicking about this. And when they end the movie, it's just like, yep, that's our life. And it's just like, dude, no, we were in there for at least like 4 hours in their like time. In movie time, it was 2.
That's a good point I didn't consider, because you'd think they'd come out, they would emerge, and then they would be older.
And dude, I had like a way better ending in my head too. I was like, oh, they're gonna come out. It's gonna be like 5 years, and Kang already was like out of the quantum realm at that time, and all this stuff. And they come out, and what do? They eat cake. And it's like, oh, you sons of bitches.
I just love the way you said, because that's how it is. Well, that's our lives. It's true.
Literally.
It undermines its own concept. It undermines with it. And then after all that shit, after all that heavy shit for the last, like, not that it's super heavy, it's not like Logan territory, but like, after all that heavy shit for like an hour and a half, then they just come out and it's this still like whiz bang Peyton Reed sensibility of Ant-Man over here, that where everything is just chipper. I'll also say that this movie, I haven't gotten to use this since Downsizing came out, but now we'll call it the Downsizing effect. You guys didn't see Downsizing with Matt Damon, did you? And Hong Chow?
I don't think so.
The movie where they get shrunk because of overpopulation.
I know what you're talking about.
They get shrunk down. You know what this Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania and Downsizing have in common? There were such long stretches about other things going on that I forgot that they could or were small. That's how long, like, Downsizing had the same thing. I remember like an hour and a half into Downsizing, I leaned over to my mother on Christmas when we saw it, and I was like, like I actually forgot they're small until like that fork just fell. Like it's been so distracted by its own plot. I forgot that they're like an inch tall. And that kind of how it felt here at times. It's like I don't need to see Ant-Man sleep in a keyhole every 5 minutes, but at the same time, it's like that's a critical part of the concept that I feel like was kind of glossed over here.
And it would have been great if like, they get there, they're like, oh crap, like we need to get out of here because the longer we spend in here, what could be happening out there in the world? And like if they would have introduced Kang or like to me, dude, the end of the first act of this movie should have been that probability action sequence. That should have been the end of the first act. You would have introduced Kang by then. There would have been conflict. You cap it off with a cool action sequence. And now it's all about, okay, not only do we have to get out of the quantum realm, but there's this guy who's also trying to do the same thing. And if he gets out, we're screwed. Like, it at least would have done that. The fact that all of that happens and then there's only like 30 minutes in the movie left was like, what the hell are you guys doing?
We will take a short break here. Zoom-sponsored intermission coming up. We'll finish talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, give our final thoughts on that, and then segue really smoothly to one of the great topics of this show, oversaturation of Marvel over here. So looking forward to that extremely. Be back in about 60 to 90 seconds. Don't go anywhere. It's a Sleepless with Steve. On point that time. Back and better than ever. Sleepless with Steve after the Zoom-sponsored intermission. Wasn't late on that signal this time. We are talking Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I had a lot more to say about this than I thought. And I think really, like I said, Joe's back might be hurting as bad as mine right now with how he's carrying this show with the talking points over here. But I also think, because this is the start, I almost forgot, I almost had to be reminded guiltily that this is the start of Phase 6, or Phase 5, excuse me. I'll say this, though. Maybe it's just the fact that they chose to start a new phase, because this has like been known as the post-Endgame Infinity Saga has been known as the multiverse saga. I don't know how many people like outside of the diehard Marvel sphere know that, but it's really been which explains it, because the multiverse has had significant impact on most of the movies since 2018 or so, 2019. But with this one, though, I almost feel like, to start Phase 5, which we'll get into what Phase 5 includes in the next topic, but I almost feel like to start Phase 5 off with this, they chose like the series that has always felt, fairly or unfairly, but I don't think many would dispute, that this series has always felt like the Ant-Man series has always felt like the most inconsequential in a way, or like the fluffiest, the most lighthearted. I mean, and here's the thing: if anybody's gonna balk at that, he's called Spider-Man by somebody in the beginning of the movie. Like, even the movie itself knows that Ant-Man is a second tier of a hero as they come. I almost feel like to include this much plot and this much stakes is almost incompatible for an Ant-Man movie, given what has preceded the previous Ant-Man movies, given how even at their most like climactic, they were always a little soft-hearted in a way, or lighthearted rather, where it's not like this is like the plot, like enough plot for like a Doctor Strange, a Captain America, like those kind of heroes, those pillar heroes, where it feels like too much stuffed into a box that's way too small, and ultimately like way too lighthearted in a way to carry this.
Um, it's you're exactly like saying what, because this movie was marketed and really talked about like being the heavier of the Ant-Man movies. It is, but not by much. Like, it's like, and I love the first Ant-Man movie. I love how goofy it is. I really do. And the second one I'm not that crazy about, but like it is a Saturday morning cartoon in a good way. Like it is like everything Steve was saying at the beginning of the show on his thoughts of like the first two movies. It's like, yeah, I can see that. With me, dude, like for this to cap things off, it's like, okay, and with the villain you have here, you had to actually kind of take this a little bit more seriously if this was going to be your kicking off point. You can't just fucking have these stingers at the end of these movies be like, okay, there we go. Now you see how serious this is getting? It's like, no, that's not how this works. It's really weird that like they chose this one. In my opinion, if I had to like choose from the slate of movies we're getting this year, I honestly would have had Guardians kick things off for us. I think that would have been great. Like, hey, we're starting off like this phase with like a goodbye to them, but like, hey man, like what's gonna come in the future? Like, stay tuned for more. Like, some stupid like Saturday morning cartoon ending like that.
Right.
Should we I was gonna say, after Dom, should we parlay into final thoughts here?
Sure.
Can I just go into my final thoughts? Because there's really not much left to say.
Fine.
For me, it's gonna be probably 2 out of 4 stars, because to give it any less than that, well, you guys tell me, but I feel like to give it any less than that would be like overblowing it, but to give it any more would just be too generous. It really does sit right there in the unsatisfying purgatory that is.
It really does.
Right, because I'm not gonna give in. It's not even giving in. I truly feel this way. I'm not gonna like give in to like all the YouTube critics where it's like Quantumania is garbage, dumpster fire. It's like, no,
The funny thing is,
don't.
Online, I've seen both sides. I've seen people call this is a great start to the phase and puts them back on track, and I've seen people just continuing like ride the wagon of no, this shit sucks now.
This wants to be like a Thor Ragnarok at times. This wants to be I don't know, an Iron Man 3 at times. And at no point am I going, this is an Ant-Man movie. Truly. And maybe that's part of the Marvel-ness of it all, but yeah, dude, 2 out of 4 stars. Jonathan Majors is the only reason you would watch this, and you can just watch Creed 3. Apollo 16. No, just watch Creed 3.
And you'll get more of him in that movie.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And shirtless.
I'm just gonna say real quick, I can't wait for Creed 3.
Same.
I am so stoked.
Was Creed 2 good? I don't care for it.
This is the Quantum. I liked it, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think it was
I need to watch it
first, but like I thought it was a solid follow-up.
Okay.
There's so much to. First off, I love the trailer for Creed 3, and I love the plot of Creed 3, and Michael B. Jordan's directing it, which I feel like has kind of been underreported. That Michael B. Jordan is the one in the director's chair for this. I already got my ticket. I am pumped for Creed 3 next week.
He said something like the action scene, like the boxing scenes, are reminiscent of like anime he grew up with, and all I thought about was
shit,
something like the best like fight scenes I've seen in like Dragon Ball Z, and like I'm like, I cannot wait for that.
I added it to the calendar, just an FYI.
All right, cool.
But so we will tackle Creed 3. Anyway, my final thoughts. Well, we got to finish and Quantumania before we can get to Creed 3. First off, notice how we barely mentioned Evangeline Lilly's the Wasp in this movie too, or in this review too, because she is a non-factor of non-factors here. I will say probably my favorite. We haven't talked a lot of positives about this thing. There's not a ton, but I will say one of my favorite elements about this movie that at least kept it from, without this, going to Dom's point, without this, I think I would have threatened a 1.5 star. But I think what happened with this movie is at least most of the emotional elements and the pathos work.
Yeah.
Between Scott and his daughter. Cassie, played by Catherine Newton. Catherine Newton's pretty good here.
She is, yeah.
And I think most of the father-daughter moments really click here. And I think that had this movie not at least had a shred or at least some sort of emotional tether to it, I think this would have been low, even lower territory. As it stands, though, I also hold by that this thing would have been more fun had it had a storyline revolved around Ant-Man the Wasp, his daughter, and the family getting like having a mission or a directive in the quantum realm as opposed to getting stuck there.
Yeah.
But this is an easily skippable entry in the MCU, which is a damn shame when you're talking about the start of phase 5. You'd like it to be a little bit more of a mic drop or at least a kickoff to something special, and maybe it will be. But Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is going to forever rank in the bottom third or fourth quadrant of MCU movies. It's 2 out of 4 for me.
Hmm.
Yeah. Look, everybody who's like watching this, they're probably like, "Man, Joe must have hated this movie." No. I'm in the same boat as them. Like I said at the beginning of this review. It's just I'm very disappointed. Like, you know, I actually did, like, you know, I was going into it hoping it would be good because I did enjoy the first one, and from the talks in the trailers, I was like, ooh, okay, they're gonna take it a little bit more seriously with Ant-Man. That's kind of cool. Like, I would like to see that. I would like to see what they do with this. We're introducing a cool villain and everything. But there's just so much of it that they just don't do anything. So much great potential that is there, and they just don't do anything with it. They just leave it barren. They just leave it there. Like, it's just like, you have these great legendary actors, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas. What'd you do with them? Nothing.
Nothing.
You have this cool team dynamic of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and how their powers work, and how synergized they are in power, like, you know, dynamics that they played really well with in the sequel. But in this one, they don't do anything with it. The daughter and father stuff does work, and I knew it was affecting me when Cassie almost gets killed, and like Scott's like actually begging for Cassie not to be killed, and I was like, all right, at least I know that's actually working because I actually felt something there.
Might be the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, I would agree. I was sitting there and I'm just like, you know, it just sucks. I'm a fan of this shit. I am not afraid to admit it. I know there's people on the internet that like scoff at me. You know, I say to you this. I had this little shitter on my desk, and let me unblur my camera here, like, real quick. But like, if you look in the background, sorry, I haven't cleaned my room because I got home just like literally 10 minutes before the show. That's a Shang-Chi poster there, reminiscent of oh my god, what are they called? Run the Jewels. And it's like, it's so like, I do love like this universe still in some ways, but I am gonna call it out when it is doing something bad. Like, and lately, it's been doing stuff really mediocre to bad. And this is not how you want to start off your next phase. This is just middle ground, mediocre as it comes. Dom said it perfectly when it's like, it doesn't feel right to give it lower than 2 stars, but it doesn't feel right to give it higher than that. It is the perfect 2-star movie. It is the perfect Disney Plus comes with your subscription movie. If you really want to see this movie, wait 2 more months. It will be on Disney Plus before you know it.
That's well put. Yeah.
Yeah, true. We shall seg smoothly into this really good discussion, but I sent you guys or it was actually Joe's. I mean, I can't take credit.
Dude,
Hollywood Reporter.
I was going off about this shit.
Hollywood Reporter had a article. Aaron Couch and Boris Kitt worked on it. It's called "How Much Is Too Much Marvel in Star Wars?" Disney rethinks franchise output. They basically went into the fact that ahead of Quantumania's release, that that Bob Iger, the reinstated CEO of Disney, commented that the company needs to be, quote unquote, better at curating franchise content that's extraordinarily expensive. He said, we want the quality on the screen, but we have to look at what they cost us. And nowadays, the way money is nowadays, like, money is pretty much, I mean, cash will be here for still a long time. I don't think cash is going anywhere. But money now is a lot of new numbers on a computer screen. And that's why I always made this joke. And granted, it's peanuts compared to what the actual money we're talking about here. But I always made this joke, especially nowadays, where I have a debit card and 2 credit cards. Like, I've made this joke that I said, like, I'm at the point I mostly use card for my expenses, but on the times I do use cash, I always say that purchase didn't count if I used cash because it doesn't show up and there's no paper trail generally. I don't really keep receipts. So I'm like, that purchase didn't count. It doesn't stare at me as pending in my banking app over here. But like now, like with money now, you know, you look at like $200 million and on a computerized ledger and a spreadsheet or whatever, and it doesn't seem like a ton of money, or it doesn't convey the gravity of how expensive these movies are. Each individual Marvel movie is like an individual company, essentially, at the price point of what these movies cost. They are like individual companies at this point. And now I think it was actually kind of telling that Iger said that, and then Ant-Man comes out and is I think now the lowest rated MCU movie, tied with Eternals, for Rotten Tomatoes score, at least. It's almost interesting how he timed that, because and it was just like, what was it, last year when Kevin Feige outlined like the 5-year plan for Marvel and where this franchise was going. Because I'm just going to briefly say this too. Phase 5, which we're effectively in now with Quantumania, here's all we have coming for Phase 5. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, Captain America New World Order, Thunderbolts. I just think of the 2005 movie Thunderbirds when I see that. I don't know what the hell a Thunderbolt is. Blade, the
Mahershala Ali.
I don't even know if Mahershala Ali is still attached. Okay. Yeah. And then for television series, something I care even less about with Marvel, you have Secret Invasion, Loki Season 2, What If Season 2, Ironheart, Echo, Agatha Coven of Chaos, and Daredevil Born Again. That's all coming in the next 2 years. Of what's coming this year, we got 2 more Marvel movies and Guardians and Marvels, and I think we got Secret Invasion and Loki Season 2 coming this year as well. I think What If Season 2.
I'm looking at the original like lineup they announced back in July at Comic-Con, and there was supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of those were gonna come out this year, like between the movies and TV shows, dude. I don't mean to hijack this, but let me just pull up Phase 3 here. Here's Phase 3's lineup. We had 1, 2 releases, movies. I know we have Disney Plus now, and that changes a few things. We have 2 releases: Civil War, Doctor Strange in 2016. 2017, Guardians 2, Thor, Black Panther, which eventually became Spider-Man, and that was the 3 releases you had there. And then in 2018, we had Black Panther, Infinity War, and Ant-Man the Wasp. So like it went from like, okay, we had 2 projects a year, and then like we're getting towards like this big climactic point, so now we're gonna start doing 3 projects a year. And it's like over the span of 2015 to 2019, it felt fine. It was like cool. But yeah, with this, it's like, dude, 8 in 1 year? Are you insane?
Yeah, it's madness. And also too, that this isn't all exclusively about Marvel. This is kind of repercussions from what Disney was coming out of this year with the, in a quote unquote post-pandemic world, because now you see this with Warner Brothers too.
Yeah.
They're trying to get people back into the theater instead of schlepping so much of their content on their respective streaming services. That's why Warner Brothers sent House Party to theaters. I don't know how much it did for them, but that's why they're sending Blue Beetle to theaters in August. But with Disney, though, keep in mind, Disney had 2 of the company's worst bombs in the history of in recent history last year, between Lightyear and Strange World.
Oh, yeah.
Second Strange World mention over here on the show today.
I forgot about Lightyear. Oh my god.
But you forgot about, of course, everybody did. But you had 2 really bad bombs, and Lightyear, like Strange World's one thing. Like Strange World, there's at least like endless. There's a few. I think there's like 3 solid points to make why Strange World didn't do as well as it should have. But Lightyear, on the other hand, Lightyear was supposed to be a fucking slam dunk. That was supposed to be a moneymaker. And deciphering that bomb is a bit harder. And that's another segment on another show. But with Iger's comments, relating it back to the bigger picture, he claims, and I think he's got a point here, because, and I think he really believes what he's selling in this regard too, is that like last year, I think some of the box office woes, in a way, not totally, but in a way, were maybe exacerbated by the fact that consumers got trained to watch things on Disney Plus during the pandemic. Between Mulan and Raya and The Last Dragon, there were so many movies on Disney Plus that, like, when it was time to go back to the theaters, people either falsely assumed that those movies were going to be on the streaming service, or they were just like,
It's gonna come
Just
to streaming.
wait, give it. It's going to come to streaming. Just wait and give it time. And then, consequently, Strange World and Lightyear bombed, and they were on Disney Plus far sooner than predicted.
Yeah.
It's like the work from home effect, where it's like, hey, suddenly we realized we could just do this.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And now they're talking about that they're going to make longer theatrical windows for Elemental. Did you guys see the trailer for that too?
No.
The new Pixar movie Elemental.
It just felt like Zootopia, but like air and water. And
I thought of Inside Out, but with the
oh,
elements.
you're right. Yeah,
that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I don't know. It looked kind of cute. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. I think the next point of confusion is people are going to think that's going to be like the Inside Out sequel when Inside Out 2 is its own separate thing. I think that's coming too. But anyway, and then there's Wish, whatever the hell that is. We'll figure that out. That's their Thanksgiving release this year. But yeah, I think that the Disney Plus stuff is one thing. Like in my humble opinion, this is what I've always said. I've never watched a complete Marvel TV show, I'll be honest, because at the end of the day, I would have probably been self-conscious to admit this 5 years ago, but I am on the back slide of my 20s right now. I don't care about the Marvel shows. I really don't. I got a full-time job. I got health insurance.
I like the implication of people who do watch Marvel shows.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I don't care. Like I don't, and I understand the catch-22 of this is it's getting harder for me to completely understand the theatrical movies because I'm not married to the TV shows. But like, I'm also of the belief that there's so much stuff out there to watch. There's so many great movies. There's so many great TV shows at this point. It's like I almost feel like you're limiting yourself if that's almost everything you watch is from this one studio. So I've always long thought that there's been too much of this shit for like the last 5 years. I've always thought this, but there's two. I mean, number one, it keeps making money. And number two, I just as a consumer choose to look elsewhere.
It's an unhealthy diet. And unless Marvel really started doing crazy,
it's not fast food.
Shit.
It's Five Guys. It's not McDonald's. It's like Five Guys, where it's like it's very expensive and it's probably not good to eat and make that the exclusive pillar of your diet.
Well, if these fanboys ate Five Guys as much as they do watch Marvel stuff, then they wind up looking like the typical comic book reader.
Marvel is Five Guys. Should I say on Sleepless?
I don't like Five Guys. Anyway, yeah. Has the bubble burst? I don't think the bubble on Marvel or superhero movies will burst until streaming bursts, which I don't think that's going to happen
until streaming bursts are one of these bombs. And I'm not going to lie, I was kind of really rooting for Ant-Man 3 to have like a $50 million opening weekend. I'm serious. I was kind of rooting for that. But then it had the biggest opening weekend of any Ant-Man movie yet. And I'm like, God damn it. I was really having some sort of faith that this thing was actually going to underperform. Like, I hate rooting for shit to fail unless it's like morally reprehensible. But like, I really wanted this to like I was rooting for a $55 million opening weekend over here.
It's hard to say. I think we're definitely deflating. It's a malaise where we're just all very, very blah. Bro, we've been having leftovers here for the past like week and a half. We need to shake things up. We need to change things up in the bedroom, honey. Like, come on. But yeah, it is interesting how this article, to tie it back to the Hollywood Reporter, they said that Star Wars is having the inverse problem, and that's actually a pretty good assessment. And I will not mention the A show because we've had a whole thing about it. But yeah, dude, coming out of Andor, maybe not, but coming out of that show, it really is a turning point. And how people come at it, because like the hardcore base, and I think it's no surprise that there's a lot of crossover between Marvel and Star Wars, but coming out of that show, it's like, hey, we got like a potential like Sopranos or Game of Thrones shit going on here. Coming out of that, people are like, bro, I've been having empty calories this whole goddamn time. This is so refreshing. I think that heavily plays into it. And I'm going outside of the article now, but at least for me, I'm really describing me at this point, and Joe. But I think that it's not being mentioned quite enough. It's been mentioned by a lot of Star Wars YouTubers who I do enjoy. But other than that, I think that's a point that's being slept on. But in terms of just the larger like business end of things, I I won't say that, if I was Kevin Feige, I'd be sweating balls because that guy's set for freaking life. And he's got a pedigree, than most, directors in Hollywood can ever dream of. But for Feige, it does wonder, like, where is the spark, right? Where is that initial, you know, where's that beam of light that Iron Man made in the cave when he was just a scrappy young billionaire, trying to get shit together and make a good franchise. Yeah. And it's going to be very hard because now we're just it feels like we're going through the motions, and these are all points that have been said over and over again ad nauseum, where everything I'm saying is a cliche, but that's just where we are in this cycle. Everything is just it's Groundhog Day in a slightly different coat of paint and CGI, and you feel that and people will try. Last point I'll try to say is that I mentioned this in the review, I always try to take a movie on individually on its own merits and then try to compare it. But the whole point of freaking Marvel movies, the whole point of these universes is that you're supposed to compare and contrast. You're supposed to connect everything together. They foist that upon you. So it's like, I can't escape it. It is just one long mural, and it's like a mess it's like Guernica, but not nearly as invoking to me. It's just all there. It's like an imitation Picasso. I made a lot of metaphors just now. Sorry about that. Joe, why don't you go?
You can send us home on this one.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, we talked about it last week. How I said, I noticed that when Bob Chapek took over, there was this whole mentality with Disney on selling you experiences and giving you as much as you want, where the parks changed to selling an experience rather than giving you rides. It's like, well, yeah, you can have this ride and it's an awesome experience, but dude, you can come to the Avengers campus and meet Captain America. It's like, dude, no, I want to go on a ride. That's why I'm paying hundreds of dollars to come to this park. And then his whole philosophy of, well, Disney Plus needs content, and they pumped out a lot with all the franchises they own. I mean, you even go, man, really look past Star Wars and Marvel and realize how much they were scrapping stuff from the past and bringing it back out. I mean, some stuff is good. I like the new Proud Family reboot. I think that's been going pretty good. But then you got other stuff where it's like, man, we're gonna take oh god, what was it? We're gonna take the Mighty Ducks and bring it back, and it's like, man, they haven't done shit with that show. And it's I look at it, it's just so strange to see. It's like we're so his whole idea of putting as much out there as possible, selling Disney Plus as this thing, it really kind of just backfired from this perspective now, looking at things with this article. The article mentions an observer, they called it a massive correction, only from a few years ago when the entertainment industry was hell-bent on giving consumers endless amounts to watch and spending endlessly in doing so. And we kind of saw the repercussions of that after COVID. Warner Brothers is look, they gave, I don't know how much money to Zack Snyder to get his version of that film out there. And that's great for the fans that loved it and everything. But look what it ended up doing eventually. It probably was a factor onto why Warner Brothers had that shakeup. It then goes on to say, you can have 10 mediocre shows or you can have 5 great shows. And that to me is the thing that we talked about last week with Andor as well, is I want stuff to the quality of this. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. Just give me the quality of this. And it's for me, Steve was talking about a full-time job, and said, dude, man, I feel you. I have a full-time job. I try to go to the gym. I go to school. Dude, I used to love keeping up with this stuff. But it's homie, I don't want to do homework every day when I come home from work and be like, oh shit, if I don't watch that new episode of Daredevil Born Again, I'm not going to know what's going to happen next weekend when I go see Captain America, the First World Order, or whatever the hell it's called. It's dude, just make it easy for me. Just be here's 2 movies a year, 3 movies a year at most, and maybe 1 to 2 shows at most a year.
The accounting department.
They will not do that. That is my perfect world.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's the thing. This I almost feel like this has to be somewhat of a unique complaint because it's like these movies keep making money. Like they
They
keep
do. And
making
here's the
hand
thing. And
over fist money. And I feel like that what they're doing right now alienates casual fans.
it does. I
The
feel like I
diehard
feel
group
like
is
the
just that
casual
big.
but like I also feel like the casual fans just gave up on the shows because like my dad and my stepmom went to go see Ant-Man, but they didn't fucking they gave up on the shows after the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. They were just like, all right, we're just gonna watch the movies only. Like it feels like the casual fans just keep up with the movies, and as long as the movies just kind of reintroduce what you already saw in the shows, and like if you're a fan and you've been eating this stuff up, you're not gonna give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's just like, dude, just you pull back on something at least, man. I don't know. Like, it's just like I know there's been like insider stuff too, where it's like since Bob Iger has come back, like the whole idea of actually being creative over like just getting stuff out there is apparently going to be true.
Yeah, we'll see about
Well,
that.
yeah, exactly. We'll see
No
about
shit,
that.
right?
And like
At this point, make us money because Chapek kind of left things in ruins from all that I've read.
yeah, and then the whole thing where Chapek took Feige out of Marvel and put him in Star Wars to get like Star Wars back on track because he was liking the money Marvel was making in comparison to Star Wars. But it's like, dude, like you took him out of that studio, and it's like I don't know if it was you running that studio or other producers, and just like only Feige had like some input. But it's like, look what happened. It just led to like this whole disarray of like projects going everywhere. Um, it really is. I mean, like Dom's saying, like we've been eating leftovers, dude. We really have. And every once in a while, you'll like open a leftover container, you'll be like, "Ooh, there's Wakanda Forever in here." It's like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
I could use some tapas right now. Yeah.
I could use a little bit of No Way Home. That sounds delicious. Like, it's like, but then like you open a container, you're like, ah, oh, damn it, Eternals. Like, it's just like, it's like I already had a Black Widow earlier this year. Like, it's
Mom,
like,
Quantumania again.
Quantumania
Women
again.
protagonists.
All right,
No,
okay, hold on. I'm fine. I'll eat a plate of women protagonists. Like,
She's back.
the new Marvel baddies have been great. I'll say that. Anyway.
Oh,
Dude,
boy.
I'll wrap up soon because we're gonna be bleeding. We are bleeding in the OT. It's crazy to see that Star Wars is having the opposite effect because I read
For now.
that, I read that because I was like, well, that's because Star Wars was doing this not too long ago. There was a point in time, and I remember I had the same feeling when I left Ant-Man Quantumania, despite like the audience I went to go see it with, they all loved it. I will say that. Like everybody was eating this movie up except for me. I went to like I was stuck in an Applebee's parking lot after this movie because of the snowstorm we had, sitting at a table, everybody gushing about the movie. I'm just sitting there like mid. And I when this reminded me when I walked out of the Star Wars spin-off Solo. And I was just like, so this is what we're gonna be getting every year from Star Wars, because like it's not good. Like, and then we got Rise of Skywalker after, and like I felt like that just kind of put a nail in the coffin in terms of movies that we haven't gotten a Star Wars movie in so long. And then with the shows, it was like, okay, Mandalorian, awesome. It was like literally repeating itself. Force Awakens, awesome. Mandalorian, awesome. What's the second? Mandalorian season 2, ooh, that was cool as well. Rogue One, Boba Fett. Okay, that was a little weird. Obi-Wan, that was good too. But like, look, we're at Andor now. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's just like we were literally going through that with Star Wars not too long ago. We really were.
Mm-hmm.
It was less movies and shows.
There's parallels here.
But it was the same kind of like I'm kind of getting burnt out on Star Wars. If this is the amount of if this is the type of quality of Star Wars we're getting, it's like I'm starting to feel the same way now a little bit with Marvel. It's like I'll go see this stuff because I am a fan. I want to keep up with it, of course. But, I'm not really rushing out to see stuff. Like, dude, I'll tell you what. When it came time for the shows, after Moon Knight, like Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, like, dude, I barely kept up with that weekly. Like, friends would be like, did you watch this week's episode? I'm like, dude, I'm like 9 episodes behind of the last show. Like,
how can you keep up with this?
It's insane sometimes. It's like, it's like it sucks for me when I feel like live shows have been easier to keep up with than streaming shows sometimes. Just because like
that's so true.
It's
that's
like,
so true.
Okay, my Wednesday nights are this show. My Sunday nights are The Last of Us. It's like it's so much easier than
I take the weekly model over the binge and devour model. I really do.
Same.
While Disney Plus does do the weekly releases, Disney Plus also pumped like there was a point it was Obi-Wan and a Star Wars show, and they were simultaneously coming out one after the other, the episodes. And I was just like, dude, I can't keep up with this. Like this, like this is an hour of my day. And
You're giving yourself a migraine over something that like you should be able to just turn on and
just
enjoy.
turn it on and have fun. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I had fun watching Obi-Wan, but like I just kind of put the Marvel show on the back burner because I was just like, you know what, Star Wars has been getting a little bit better.
One more thing, you're
I'm done, by the way.
you know what's funny was I'll end with this. I'll seg out of this by this. I got to see like it was almost parallelism in a weird way. I saw the third installment of two separate trilogies be vastly more mediocre than anything I've seen before in the matter of like 3 days. Between Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Magic Mike's Last Dance.
Oh, dude, I heard that kind of was disappointing.
It's very disappointing. And you know what's funny? Like, and I always hate it. This is why I try not to read reviews before I see movies. But David Ehrlich, who gave it a better rating than I did, he gave it 3 out of 5. I gave it 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. He had the best line from Magic Mike's Last Dance, and it sounds kind of like almost like I feel like Joe's opinion on Quantumania. David Ehrlich's review of Magic Mike 3. He said, pretty good. Pretty pleasant as far as heartbreaking disappointments are concerned. and I'm watching like Magic Mike's Last Dance yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly to that to a T. Pretty pleasant as far as heartbreaking disappointments are concerned.
Dude, and like I look at the lineup of like movies that are coming out this year, and it's like, man, anything that's not a comic book, I'm just so much more excited for it. I really am. Like, I can't wait to see
Cocaine Bear next week. What it do, baby?
Yeah, like Creed 3 is coming out soon. Hell, I saw a clip today from that D&D movie that's coming out. I laughed my ass off at that clip. I'm like, what the hell is happening in the world?
Let's not go.
I'm serious, dude.
Let's start talking crazy over here.
When the people of Game Night wrote that movie, I was like, this might be a secret banger. We'll see.
It's gonna stay. It's going to be a secret banger for me because I ain't watching it. I ain't sitting through that shit. I might be a nerd, but Jesus,
it looks very normie for a D&D movie.
It really does. I'm not gonna, but like. My friend asked me, he's like, "Are you gonna see the D&D movie?" And I'm like, "I might be a nerd, but there's even shit I don't touch." Like, you know what I'm gonna do? Because I did buy it because I got it for cheap. I bought the Warcraft movie on Blu-ray. Because I
remember liking that.
$3, and I bet it's terrible, but I kind of want to watch it. The D&D movie is probably something I will watch 6 years down the road just to see if its 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes is the least bit justified. That's what I'm doing. I'm embarking pretty soon. I just got the Blu-ray on the Warcraft Retribution project. We'll see if it lives up to that. But I have my own doubts on that. But next week is Cocaine Bear, which I am supremely pumped for tomorrow night. And I don't think I'm the only one. I think this is going to make a ton of money.
I hope so.
I think this is going to make a ton of money. I do.
I hope so, just for Elizabeth Banks' sake.
Thank you.
Yep. I agree. No, I think it's going to make a ton of money. I think it's already a meme, which I at this point, I think it's already a midnight movie.
It's got a meme actor in it, yeah.
The only point of concern at this point is that reviews are embargoed until tomorrow. That's the only concern right now.
I'm splat. I'll be like, 2023 is over. I thought this was gonna be the year of returns.
But I will say I did see like 2 or 3 critics post their thoughts, and everybody was calling it really good. Okay, so good. Like, I wonder if it's just they're just holding it just for the buzz factor. But yeah, what a great lineup this weekend. Cocaine Bear. The next two movies I'm seeing in theaters: Cocaine Bear and Jesus Revolution. Couldn't be perfect.
Oh, that one.
Couldn't be more perfect. Another friend of mine was looking at my AMC Stubs list because I buy my tickets in advance. And at the time I had Ant-Man, Cocaine Bear, and Jesus Revolution, all 3 tickets. And he just goes, look at this fucking list. He goes, look at this.
He's right.
But at any rate, that's our show today. Great show as always. Really happy to be back in the saddle. Next week, we are talking Cocaine Bear. Following week, we are going to be reviewing Chris Rock's live Netflix special. That's right, his live stand-up special, Selective Outrage. That airs on Netflix March 4th at 7 o'clock. I'm looking forward to it. My girlfriend and I are going to pull up some popcorn, a couple cocktails, and watch that live. Hopefully no technical difficulties, because then it's going to be Selective Outage instead of Selective Outrage. But anyway, that's our show. Great to be back with you guys. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.